Jacob Adams' first teaching gig was at a majority Black elementary school in Brownsville, Brooklyn. The school had a breakfast program.
The kindergartners would come the first couple of days before anybody else came.
These are 5-year-olds. Maybe they're excited to meet other students, nervous about whether their teacher will be nice. It may be the longest they've ever spent away from their families in their whole lives.
I'd say what I'm most excited about on my first day of school is meeting other students. I'm a bit nervous because I hope my teacher will be nice. I've never been away from my mom and dad for this long.
You'd hope that this would be a safe and supportive environment for students. Instead,
all right, now listen up. Today, we're going to learn some rules.
They gotta sit there with their hands folded.
Don't let those hands come apart.
Gotta have their feet on the ground.
Uncross those legs right now.
And then when you're walking in line, hands are on your legs. You're looking at the person in front of you.
Eyes on the back of the head of the person in front of you at all times.
As soon as kids take their hands apart, people are walking over and taking the kids breakfast.
You can get this back when you learn to follow the rules.
We're just controlling these kids, the way they think, the way they sit, the way they move, where they look, how much they could talk. There'd be 50 people at breakfast just watching all these Black kids eat breakfast and not talk, just so they could learn how to go back to their neighborhood and have a bunch of Black kids be quiet and be still and do whatever they say.
I'm your host, Nicole Jarbo, and this is Pitch Playground from 4.0. This week, Jacob Adams shares his pitch for Inner Spark Learning Lab, formerly known as STEM to the Future.
What we're doing is helping kids be able to develop their own literacy of the world and not be able to just accept things the way they are.
This season, we're hearing 10 ideas from entrepreneurs reimagining the future of learning. And we pair them up with funders who can help them strengthen their pitch. Today, Jacob pitches his idea to Niloy Gangopadhyay, a longtime leader in education with over 2 decades of experience launching initiatives in Texas, New York, and Louisiana. He's now a vice president at Teach for America National.
And I feel like there's so many ways to reach students outside of the traditional curriculum. And I'm really passionate about mental health and emotional well-being, behavioral health.
Jacob is eligible to win $50,000 towards his idea. Stay tuned for when voting will open. Jacob went to the public school down the street from his house in Georgia until grade 4. Then he got accepted into a more prestigious school further away. Jacob excelled there. He was getting all A's and B's, except in conduct.
Every time you would get in trouble during the week, you usually had to go sign a book. And that would be deductions off your overall conduct grade. I was signing that book a lot. So I usually have a C in conduct.
Why were you not getting straight A's in conduct? What was going on?
I feel like there's just a lot of things to comment on. So I like to be the narrator of the class and the commentator. And that's how I kept things eventful and fun for me at school. The academic stuff, it wasn't interesting. It felt boring. I didn't really know why we were learning the stuff. It didn't seem like I was ever going to use it, most of which I never have used. It wasn't like I was coming in there looking to be disrespectful or cause chaos. I would just kind of get bored and be all right, we need some entertainment, and I guess that's what my role here is.
The school had an A-B honor roll. It recognized students who didn't have any grades lower than a B on their report card. Jacob wasn't eligible for the award because of all those C's he had in conduct.
Then during the honors day, the principal is
Next we have A-B honor roll with the exception of conduct, Jacob Adams.
I was like, what? So I went up there, got my award, sat down, and then went on to another award. And then they never did that thing again.
There was a teacher who created the award category for Jacob. That teacher was Miss Battle. She saw something in Jacob that she thought deserved to be recognized despite his poor conduct grade.
I really appreciate that teacher. I wish I could talk to her about it because I'm wondering what made her advocate for me, but I think some of it had to do with, I was still engaging, with the stuff we were learning. I was asking questions, I was being respectful. And the stuff I was getting in trouble for was just, being silly.
Getting that award sent a powerful message to Jacob.
you're still a good student, like you're a good learner. You still need to be recognized. And the fact that you're not like following all these rules the way the school wants you to follow them, it's not a character flaw. And it's almost now something that I embrace.
Jacob went on to college at the University of Southern Tennessee. To get in, Jacob had to do some courses over a 6-week summer school.
And I remember my first day of school there. I remember going there thinking this would be easy. My first day of class, I was like, oh, I'm not that smart. Mid 3-week point, I had 2 C's. I just remember going to my room and crying, like, dang, I'm not prepared. I'm not as smart as I thought. First person in my family to go to college. I'm not even gonna get in. And this is about to be the end of my life.
But Jacob figured it out.
I had the belief in myself that whatever this is, I'll be able to get through.
He started seeking mentorship and support wherever he could.
Someone on the football team, so I was playing football, and he was a math major. So I would start to go talk to him almost every day about what we were doing in math, and then also go to all like the office hours with the professor. And then there was someone who would read our papers every night in English, just like at our dorm. And I would go talk to her every night.
Jacob had to learn how to learn in an environment like that, and the work paid off.
And after the summer, like college was easy. I just needed those 6 weeks to figure out how to be a student.
After college, like many of the founders on this podcast, Jacob signed up for Teach for America.
I got placed at this elementary school in Brownsville, Brooklyn, and was teaching first grade.
This was a school serving all Black students. They had a weeks-long professional development at the beginning of school before bringing students in.
You're doing the practice with the adults, you're simulating kids. They gotta like sit there with their hands folded, gotta have their feet on the ground, can't even swing your legs. And then when you're like walking in line, hands are on your legs, you're like looking at the person in front of you. And if you're not doing all that stuff, like you're getting in trouble. So I was like, well, this is weird.
After practicing that along with the other teachers, Jacob got to see it in action during the breakfast program at the school on his first day.
The kindergartners would come the first couple of days before anybody else came.
Now, listen to me. Today, we're going to learn some rules.
And the kids are at breakfast. And we simulated this, but once it's different when it's a 21-year-old, 22-year-old, and when it's a 5-year-old who first day at school. But the kids there, they got their hands folded, they got their breakfast. As soon as kids like take their hands apart, people are walking over and like taking the kids breakfast until they do whatever they're told to do. There'd be like 50 people at breakfast just watching all these Black kids eat breakfast and not talk, just so they could learn how to go back to their neighborhood and have a bunch of Black kids be quiet and be still and do whatever they say. And at that point, you're like, whoa, this can't be right.
But everyone was telling Jacob that it was right. Test scores at the school were some of the best in the whole state.
And then they justify it because they have these like high academics. And, you know, schools led by a Black woman, the VP of the district of the network is a Black woman. It's mostly young white women working in there. And I'm like, yo, this is racist. And they're like, how's it racist? There's 2 Black people leading it. And you're like, oh, man. You almost have to check yourself, like, am I okay? Like, or am I the one that's tripping? Because almost everyone else around you will look at the outcomes and say, you're tripping because look at what these kids are able to achieve.
This school was applying something called the broken windows theory. Basically, it encourages teachers to address small signs of disorder that could help prevent more serious issues. It has an environment of strict enforcement of small rules and harsh discipline. In recent years, this style of teaching, especially as it applies to Black students, has been heavily scrutinized. Studies show that Black students are more likely to be disciplined and face harsher punishments than others.
We're just controlling these kids, the way they think, the way they sit, the way they move, where they look, how much they could talk, in service of like them just to remember a bunch of stuff that I know they're not going to need this stuff.
How do you reconcile being the kid who wasn't getting A's in behavior and conduct, and then being the person who's in charge of a bunch of little kids and making sure that they're overly compliant?
I can't even lie, like the very beginning, so maybe like the first few weeks, I'm just doing what they tell me to do, so I'm not getting in trouble. And even while I'm doing that, I know it's not something I want to do. That's like not how I want to talk to kids, not how I want to treat them. But I was just so caught up in looking out for myself, I honestly wasn't thinking about them how I wish I would have at that time. But my co-teacher, she got real sick and she was out for a month. And I was like, all right, well, now she gone. I can't deal with that and try to be this like overseer that they're trying to make me be. So I'm gonna just try to figure out how to be myself and how can we navigate these different rules without blowing up the spots.
Jacob decided to start running the class his way.
At some point, I was telling the kids, like, yo, let's just chill. If it's just me and y'all in here, sit how you want to sit. I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to talk how I'm going to talk, and we'll do our own thing. But I was like, if the principal come in, the vice principal come in, the teacher across the hall, any of them come in, we all got to switch it up.
Jacob started teaching the students from a resource called Learning for Justice. It's a community education program developed by the Southern Poverty Law Center. It addresses racial injustices in the South and encourages learning, reflection, and action.
Talking about the level of engagement where it's not forced, and they get to have the opportunity to like kind of think critically and question the way things are. Just seeing how that would go in those moments really kind of showed me like, this is what it could be.
What should school be in your eyes?
It's like a place where you come and you develop the tools so that you can constantly be able to figure out who you are and like what do you care about? How does your mind work? Like what things are you passionate about? You know, what things are giving you meaning in life? And from there, like now how can we use all those things like to create the things that we need and do what the community needs, as opposed to now I think it's a place where more or less just like learning how to accept the way the world is and kind of teaching us a worldview or a belief that this is as good as it can get. So, accept it.
Jacob went on to get a job as a teacher coach with Teach for America in LA. It was his first opportunity to see schools other than the one that he taught at.
But one thing that I'm seeing consistently is, even if it's a quote unquote like high performing school that I was supporting, like the curriculum was whack. It was boring. So at that point, I wanted to start to think of a way to teach that will allow kids to start to like tap into who they are.
Jacob met someone who ran one of the only majority Black charter networks in LA who supported his idea.
And then I did like a 8-week pilot with 25 kindergartners and first graders. It went amazing and just kind of validated a lot of the things that I was thinking were possible, like even with kids that young.
With that, Inner Spark was born. What is your Inner Spark elevator pitch?
Inner Spark Learning Lab is creating a way of teaching that allows elementary and middle school students to kind of go through this process of self-actualization and, learn more about who they are, who they want to be, and how to like create the change that they want to see in themselves and then in the neighborhood and in the community.
What do you think adults and potentially educators, what do you think is their sort of biggest misconception around what's important to young people right now?
I think that as adults, we think we know what's best for kids. And to some degree, like, sure, we definitely are responsible for these like little people. But we can't and we shouldn't discount their thoughts and opinions just because they're younger. Like, for one, they see the world in a much different way than we do. How do we teach kids how to be? Like, just teach them how to be, which feels so simple. But no matter what happens in the world, we know you're going to need to be able to think critically. Like, you're going to need to believe in yourself, and you're going to need to know who you are. I would like to think you're going to need to know the things you care about and the things that, give you meaning. But I think if you look at most curriculum or more schools, like, none of that is being taught.
Give me some examples of how this work has positively impacted kids.
We have this youth participatory action research program, and 2 years ago, the engineering program, the girls had made 2 different things. And one was like they built and coded this like multi-layer candy machine where, depending upon what color Lego you drop through the thing, that will dictate which candy comes out. Cool, kind of sophisticated. Then right next to that, they've built this like prototype of a shield that would protect the kids during a school shooting. And it's like 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds. And so it's like just seeing those 2 things right next to each other made by the same group of girls, is like, on one hand, you see what you think kids are thinking about and kind of what you might be hope they're thinking about. And then on the other hand, you see the other like sad reality that they're dealing with.
The programs Jacob is running allow for students to research and create projects based on their lived experience.
They've also built these like hand sanitizer machines that were used at mutual aid events. It's like unhoused folks were coming to get food.
This is the voice of one of those students speaking at one of these events.
Hi, I'm Almnash Yusuf. I'm 10 years old, and I'm here today at the Mutual Aid Center, right here. Now imagine people who are just homeless. They will be fighting for water. That's something we should not fight for. That's not right. It's not right. And it breaks my heart to see that. So, today I helped made the hand washing machine. So, people who are homeless can have a reliable access to wash their hands.
And then another example that I think also just speaks to what happens when you give kids more ownership over what they learn is in doing the research for their projects, the kids like going to the farmer's market, asking people about different issues that they care about. The second most cared about issue was homelessness, and the issue that had the least amount of support was the LGBTQ community. And so we were talking to the kids about the data, and the kids were like, we want to do something for the LGBTQ community because that's the thing that got the least amount of support. And I was thinking, dang, as an educator, you probably wouldn't have designed the class like that.
The feedback Jacob has been getting from teachers whose students have participated in the program has been really positive.
Also, I have seen students come out of their shell and really want to participate. And so I think it helps their personality, it helps their imagination, it helps them broaden their horizons and do other things that they wouldn't normally do. And I really enjoy working with the program.
What has been the impact to date of InnerSpark?
So we have, just last year alone, till 2023-24 school year, worked with over 35,000 students. And like, I'm proud of it. For us to be a small team and be working with that many kids is definitely something to be proud of. But I would also say, like, in terms of impact, we just got our first year impact report back from our researchers. 94% of the kids saw an increase in like psychological safety, like high 80% had a strong sense of belonging. Those things really stand out to me because I think like ultimately like that's what we're trying to do. It's like create the space and the environment where kids can go through this change that we think is necessary.
Along with the direct work that Jacob is doing in schools, they're also generating research that they hope can support similar programs more broadly.
And so what we are really focused on is being an organization that like generates knowledge and then being able to share those with schools and districts through like our research papers, through our professional development.
Right now, Jacob is shifting the model of InnerSpark. In the past, they've tried to be in 10 schools, but they haven't always been able to develop the deep relationships that they feel are necessary to create lasting change. They are transitioning to focusing on 3 schools and adding in a new role called a Dreamweaver. If Jacob wins the $50K, he'll use the money to partially fund that person's salary.
And their role is to be learning as much as they can about the kids at the school, their families, and then like the more broader school community. And then they're using that information to figure out like what unique needs does the school have, and then what connections do we have in the community that can help meet them.
Now, Jacob gets to pitch his idea to Niloy, who spent over 20 years making public education more equitable. He co-founded a charter school in New Orleans, led statewide programs for at-risk students at the Texas Education Agency, and has been shaping policies that make a real difference for students in schools.
I'm passionate about figuring out ways that are not traditional or the orthodox ways that we followed in education. So it doesn't necessarily need to be disruptive, but just in getting the ball rolling on new ideas. And I feel like there's so many ways to reach students outside of the traditional curriculum. And I'm really passionate about mental health and emotional well-being, behavioral health.
Niloy dives into what questions he has about Jacob's pitch and how he can strengthen it. Things like, who are all the facilitators of the program and what is their role? What is Jacob's business model and how is it tied to the program model? How is Jacob measuring the impact that the program is having on students? Here's their conversation.
want to jump in. So who's actually running the labs or doing the programming at schools?
So at a school, we have a facilitator teaching our curriculum, which is like the foundation of it is based off of the social justice standards. So the facilitator is holding that down weekly. And then we also have someone at the school, which is their role is a dream weaver. And the dream weaver is someone who is there to like learn more about the specific like needs of that school. And then the third person at the school is the person who runs our youth participatory action research program, where the kids are doing like research in and with the school community, and then working with someone who has like an expertise within either engineering, design, or health justice to develop a solution to like some unmet need that's like come up at the school.
So I'm curious to learn a little bit more about your financial model and a little bit about just the programmatic model as it's tied to the financial model.
So the financial model, we have a fee for service aspect of our nonprofit, which is actually all we had for the first few years when I founded it back in 2018. And so the school's budgets, they can't afford 2 full-time people and a after-school program, but they'll cover a portion of it. And then the rest of those funds are covered by our like foundation partners and then also like individual giving. And then we also have a whole like professional development that we do. Schools, districts, youth development organizations also pay for that. So that covers, I think, like 30% of the budget, and the other 70 is philanthropic.
The other question I had, just in a few sentences, just the idea of like, if you could crystallize like the impact that the program has had on students.
Think about this one student who we're still really close. I was talking to his mom recently, and she was saying like every other program that he's in, they have to like drag him to it. But when he was in our program, that was the only thing he'd be out the door waiting to come to. And I remember him specifically saying in one of the classes that like, this is different than school because y'all actually care about what I think. You give kids some power and you give them some autonomy, they typically want to be there.
What do you expect students 2 years out, having gone through the lab, to do academically and outside of the classroom? What are they doing?
So we have the outcomes we care about: psychological safety, critical thinking, ownership over their learning, and belonging. And so we're like, if you can create an environment where kids are able to, they feel like they belong, they feel safe, their critical thinking is developing, they feel like they own what they're learning. If you can create that environment, all these like academic outcomes, our like hypothesis is if you have those outcomes, that's going to be able to set the school up to excel or at minimum improve these more like academic outcomes that they're prioritizing.
When Niloy and Jacob talk about academic outcomes here, they're talking about the things that schools typically measure. These could be things like reading proficiency tests, math scores, rates of absenteeism. But Jacob taught at a school that had high academic scores while enforcing strict systems of control. You have to ask, are the systems of measurement broken?
If we only focus on these academic outcomes, you got a lot of like kids who are like, have a good memory at minimum, but like, do they really know how to question things? Are they able to like think critically and not just learn how to think within a certain box that like the school is trying to put them in? Who is that academic achievement helping at that point? Like, is it helping society as a whole? Is it helping a certain aspect of society? Is it helping the community that they're in and coming from? I think like those are kind of questions I start to think about when we think about what outcomes are important and why they're important.
I mean, I think something I was thinking about, right? A lot of times students don't feel successful in school and they get derailed early, right? Which leads to like chronic absenteeism, leads to like classroom culture issues, and generally gets them down a path that's like not successful, at least in the sort of classroom setting. But it strikes me as if you can feel excited about coming to school because you see yourself being successful, I think that could be a game changer. And, you know, I think mental health and emotional well-being, behavioral health on its own right is great, hands down, right? We all need that. I think the strengths of the program obviously are that it's putting students at the center of their learning, right? Inspiring them to like want to know more, learn more. I think the other strengths are like, it's got a model, but like where, you know, you have a dream weaver, you have a facilitator, and then you have PD. In terms of learning, you have outside folks who are doing research, but also internally spending dollars, investing human capital in getting better at the product itself and making tweaks and adjustments. So I think those are strengths. as a school leader, when I think about like, I want to have students at the center of learning. I want every student or every child to be excited. I think I would want to know like, hey, if I do the program, what are some measurable outcomes? And so like being crystal clear about, we're going to see an increase in like decrease in chronic absenteeism, an increase in classroom participation, right? And engagement in classwork being completed, right? In terms of from a pitch perspective, you got to mix in some quantitative data. I think that's really important, Jacob.
Last year was the first year we invested in our 4-year research partnership. So some of the stuff is like, I know we need to know, and now we're like taking the time to figure it out. So it's also like good that the feedback is like, yeah, y'all need to keep learning. And then you need to be able to share that learning, because that's exactly what, we want to do and need to do.
I'm excited to continue to learn and follow your journey of learning the lab.
No, for sure. No, thank you, Niloy. This was super helpful.
As Jacob continues to inspire students to think critically and question the way the world is, he'll need to balance that with finding ways to demonstrate success with some of the traditional learning measurements that schools want to see. Here are a few things that I'd like you all to keep thinking about after this episode is over.
It wasn't like I was coming in there looking to be disrespectful or like cause chaos. I just kind of get bored and be like, all right, we need some entertainment, and I guess that's what my role here is.
You may be tempted to label the class clown as a troublemaker, but remember, there might be a deeper story there.
Now imagine people who are just homeless. They will be fighting for water. That's something we should not fight for. That's not right. It's not right. And it breaks my heart to see that.
Listen to what's important to students. Don't just dictate what you think they ought to care about.
I think mental health and emotional well-being, behavioral health on its own right is great. Hands down, right? We all need that.
Putting wellness at the center of learning can have ripple effects across all aspects of education. Jacob, it was so great to have you on the show. Thank you for sharing your story. And Niloy, thank you for your mentorship and advice. Remember, Jacob is eligible to win $50,000 towards his idea. Stay tuned for when voting will open. Thanks for tuning into Pitch Playground from 4.0. I'm your host, Nicole Jarbo. Learn more about Pitch Playground at pitchplayground.com. And leave us a review if you like the episode. Next episode, we'll be hearing a pitch from Aaron Freeman, the founder of Uncommon Construction.
We really hang our hard hat, so to speak, on the development and demonstration of soft skills. We focus on teamwork ethic, problem solving, professional attitude, communication. These are research-based frameworks that we've adopted that are formative assessments of whether and how our young people are on track for success in work and life after graduating high school.